The Alliance Council had always regarded Viridia as an insignificant planet, a minor piece on the vast galactic chessboard. With its modest underground cities and an economy reliant on energy crystals, it seemed unlikely that the Viridians could threaten any star system, let alone the powerful coalition of core worlds. When the first sanctions were imposed, no one expected resistance. The Alliance cut off trade routes, restricted essential technology, and declared Viridia a strategic containment zone, all with the aim of suffocating its culture and peacefully absorbing it. However, what the Alliance didn't know was that beneath layers of rock and dust, the Viridians harbored a secret capable of changing the course of galactic history: the Nexus. The Nexus points, unstable fragments of spacetime, had always been feared and avoided by the most advanced civilizations. But for Viridia, they represented an opportunity. For generations, the Viridians had studied these anomalies, decoding their unpredictability and harnessing their energy to develop a unique technology: Nexus jumps. It was a misunderstood and dangerous science, capable of opening portals to anywhere in the galaxy, and potentially to any moment in time. For years, Viridia's leaders had kept this knowledge as a last line of defense, but the Alliance's sanctions forced them to do the unthinkable: use the Nexus as a weapon. At the heart of the resistance was Naira, the brilliant mind behind Nexus technology. A determined and pragmatic scientist, she had devoted her life to unraveling the mysteries of spacetime, fully aware that tampering with such forces could be as deadly as it was liberating. The Nexus isn't just a tool, she often said. It's a gamble. Alongside her was Kaon, a former military officer and strategist who led the resistance with cold determination. Though he didn't fully trust the Nexus, he knew it was their only advantage against the Alliance. If we don't use it now, we'll never have another chance, he declared during a meeting of the Elder Council, convincing them to authorize the first jump. When the Alliance fleet arrived in Viridia's orbit, they expected a weakened, resigned planet. Instead, they found the unexpected: a flagship instantly transported to an unknown asteroid field, while the remaining fleet faced energy storms that disabled their systems. The resistance, led by Kaon on the ground and supported by Naira's calculations in the lab, launched a series of surgical strikes, exploiting the chaos created by the Nexus. They may have the numbers, Kaon said as he led a ground assault against the invading forces. But we have the impossible. However, the initial victory came at a cost. The Nexus was inherently unstable, and every jump left fractures in the fabric of spacetime, which began to expand, creating unpredictable anomalies. Naira noticed this far too soon as she analyzed the data from a recent jump. "We're using a weapon we don't fully understand," she warned Kaon. But he, staring at the destruction caused by the Alliance's attacks, responded with his trademark coldness. "If we don't use it, they won't stop until they've destroyed us." This tension between survival and responsibility began to fracture the resistance from within, even as they fought to protect what remained of their planet. The Resistance's initial successes brought a wave of hope to the Viridians, but also drew the Alliance's attention in ways no one could have foreseen. In orbit, Admiral Drassic, a methodical strategist renowned for his ruthless approach, reorganized the remaining fleet. "These Nexus jumps aren't magic. They're a flaw we can exploit," he declared to his officers. Drassic ordered autonomous drones to analyze the patterns of the anomalies caused by the jumps in an effort to identify weaknesses. He knew that defeating Viridia wouldn't require brute force but patience and control. "If they want to meddle with forces beyond their understanding, we'll show them the price of that." While the Alliance fleet adapted, chaos began spreading across Viridia. The Nexus jumps, though effective at confusing the enemy, were destabilizing the planet itself. Energy storms swept across the crystal fields, causing spontaneous explosions, while tremors shook the underground cities, threatening to collapse their foundations. Naira spent hours in her lab, desperately trying to understand the Nexus's growing impact. "Each jump doesn't just create an anomaly, it feeds it," she explained to Kaon as she displayed the data on a holographic screen. "If we keep this up, we might destroy Viridia before the Alliance even gets the chance." Kaon listened carefully but remained resolute. "If we stop now, we're dead. You know that," he replied with his usual calm but unyielding tone. Frustrated, Naira retorted, "And if we continue, we won't survive much longer either. We're playing with forces we can't control." This exchange, though typical between the two, revealed a growing conflict. The balance between Kaon's urgency to protect Viridia at all costs and Naira's concern over the consequences of their actions. As internal debates grew more intense, the Elder Council faced mounting pressure from the population. Many civilians, frightened by the anomalies and tremors, began questioning the resistance. "We're destroying ourselves," argued one of the civilian leaders during a council meeting. "The Nexus is a weapon that should never have been used." Kaon, with his characteristic determination, responded, "Without it, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. The Alliance would have erased us before we finished our first sentence." But even within the resistance, doubts were spreading. How far were they willing to go to ensure Viridia's survival? The escalation continued as the Alliance made its next move. Infiltration drones, reconfigured to navigate the Nexus anomalies, breached the planetary defenses and attacked one of Viridia's main generators powering its shields. The assault was devastating. Naira, in the lab when the energy systems began failing, rushed to the emergency consoles. "They're learning," she murmured as she tried to reroute the energy flow. But she wasn't fast enough. The resulting explosion caused even greater tremors, destroying an entire section of the underground city and leaving hundreds dead. The attack's impact was felt across the resistance. Civilians demanded answers while the council scrambled for solutions. Kaon, seeing morale plummet, decided to lead a direct assault on the Alliance's ground forces. "They hit us. Now it's our turn," he declared as he rallied his team. Naira tried to persuade him to reconsider. "Every move we make only adds to the chaos. We need strategy, not impulsiveness." But Kaon wouldn't wait. "If we don't face them now, they'll finish the job." Kaon's mission was brutal and chaotic. Using Viridia's natural tunnels, he led a small group of fighters in a series of ambushes against the Alliance's ground forces. While the attacks initially succeeded, the losses were significant, and the Alliance's advance remained relentless. When Kaon returned to the Citadel, exhausted and injured, he found Naira waiting for him. "The more we fight, the more we destroy what we're trying to protect," she said, tears in her eyes. For the first time, Kaon had no immediate response. The final moment of this chapter was marked by a grim discovery. While analyzing the anomalies, Naira detected an unusual pattern. The fractures in space-time were beginning to connect to other star systems. "The Nexus isn't just destroying us," she explained to Kaon, her voice trembling. "It's affecting the entire galaxy." Kaon remained silent, staring at the holographic projection before them. "Then we're not just fighting for Viridia," he said at last. "We're fighting to keep this from destroying everything." The discovery that the Nexus was affecting other star systems changed everything. For Naira, it turned a war for Viridia's survival into something much greater, a threat to the stability of the entire galaxy. However, for Kaon, the immediate goal remained the same: protect what was left of his people. "We can't save the galaxy if we can't save our planet," he said, staring at the holographic maps showing the Alliance forces reorganizing. Naira knew he was right but couldn't ignore what she had uncovered. "Every jump we make could mean the end of another system," she replied. "This isn't just about us anymore." While Naira worked in the lab to better understand the Nexus, the Alliance continued its advance. Admiral Drassic, aware that the Nexus was both an advantage and a weakness for Viridia, ordered a large-scale deployment of sabotage drones. Unlike previous units, these drones were designed to infiltrate the planet's energy systems, overloading the energy crystals and further destabilizing its defenses. "If we can't face them directly, we'll let them destroy themselves," Drassic declared in a transmission to his officers. His strategy wasn't just military, it was psychological. He wanted the Viridians to lose faith in their own technology. Tension in the Citadel mounted as defenses began to fail. Crystal explosions rendered entire regions uninhabitable, forcing civilians to relocate constantly. For Kaon, the situation was becoming unsustainable. "They're surrounding us without firing a single shot," he told Naira as they watched the drones in the sky. Naira, however, had other concerns. During one of her experiments, she detected a pattern indicating an external presence within the anomalies. It's not just the Nexus reacting, she explained. Something or someone is interacting with it, and we don't know what it is. This new revelation shook the resistance even further. Some members began questioning whether the Nexus should be destroyed, while others insisted it was Viridia's only chance. If we abandon the Nexus, we're handing the planet to the Alliance, Kaon argued during a council meeting. But if we keep using it, we might destroy everything around us, Naira countered. This division created internal fractures that threatened the Resistance's unity, even as they faced an ever-growing external threat. Amidst this tension, the Alliance launched its boldest move yet. Using the data collected by the drones, they identified the location of the Nexus core, the central facility where Naira worked. Drassic ordered a direct assault, deploying an elite ground force to capture it. When Kaon received the news, he gathered his team to intercept the invaders. They can't get near the core, he said as he prepared an ambush in the tunnels leading to the facility. If we lose it, we lose everything. The battle in the tunnels was brutal. Outnumbered and under-equipped, Kaon's team faced Alliance soldiers armed with advanced weaponry and AI support. The confrontation was marked by heroic sacrifices, as Resistance members gave their lives to protect the core. Despite the losses, Kaon managed to stop the Alliance's advance, but the victory came at a cost. He was gravely injured, and most of the tunnels were destroyed, leaving the core vulnerable to future attacks. While Kaon recovered, Naira made a risky decision. She initiated a small-scale Nexus jump to transport the core to a safer location, far from the Alliance forces. The jump succeeded, but not without consequences. The energy released by the jump created a new anomaly, which began expanding rapidly, threatening to engulf the surrounding region. We're running out of time, Naira told Kaon when he returned to command. If we don't stabilize the Nexus, there won't be a Viridia left to save. The chapter's final moment was marked by a transmission from the Alliance. Admiral Drassic, now visibly more calculating, offered a truce. Surrender the Nexus, and we will spare what remains of your planet, he said in a holographic message to the Council. For many, it seemed like a reasonable solution, but Kaon didn't trust the offer. They don't just want the Nexus, he declared. They want to erase us. Naira, torn between her responsibility to the planet and the galactic impact of the Nexus, knew a decision had to be made. If we surrender, we doom the galaxy. If we fight, we might doom ourselves, she told Kaon. For the first time, he had no immediate answer. Topic 3. The Razor's Edge. Admiral Drassic's proposal of a truce divided Viridia's council. Some leaders, exhausted and desperate, saw surrendering the Nexus as the only way to avoid the planet's total destruction. Others, led by Kaon, believed that surrender would amount to cultural suicide. They won't spare us. This isn't just about the Nexus. It's about what we represent, he argued during a heated meeting. Naira, however, remained silent, her thoughts consumed by the anomaly that continued to grow. She knew the choice was no longer just between Viridia and the Alliance. It was between preserving the present or protecting the future of the entire galaxy. While the Council debated, conditions on the planet continued to worsen. Unstable energy crystals exploded in chains, causing landslides and tremors that destroyed the last habitable areas. Civilians were forced to seek refuge in deeper tunnels, while the Resistance worked tirelessly to maintain order. Kaon led evacuation and containment missions, but the weight of the war was beginning to show. During a conversation with Naira, he admitted, "I've seen planets die before, but I never thought it would be my own." In her lab, Naira made a discovery that changed her perspective. During her analysis of the anomalies, she found evidence suggesting that the Nexus wasn't a Viridian creation but a relic from a long-extinct civilization. "We didn't invent this," she explained to Kaon as she displayed the data. "We just activated something we don't understand. And now we're paying the price." This revelation further shook Naira's confidence in using the Nexus, but Kaon saw it differently. "If they created it, maybe they knew how to control it," he said. "We need to find out what they knew." This search for answers led Naira and Kaon on a desperate mission. to explore an ancient Nexus facility hidden in the northern mountains of Viridia. The site, sealed for generations, was a legend among the planet's scientists. It was believed to contain records about the Nexus's origins and possibly instructions for stabilizing it. The journey there was perilous, with the team facing energy storms and ambushes from the Alliance, which had learned of the operation. During the trek, Kaon began to notice the emotional burden Naira carried. "You blame yourself for this, don't you?" he asked. She hesitated before replying, "I just wanted to save Viridia. But maybe I doomed everything." When they reached the facility, what they found was both wondrous and terrifying. The walls were covered in glowing inscriptions that pulsed with a familiar energy, but there was something else, a presence. As they explored, the lights seemed to react to Naira's movements, guiding her to a central console. "It's like it's alive," she said, a mix of awe and fear in her voice. When she activated the console, an ancient artificial intelligence materialized. It explained that the Nexus was designed to connect civilizations, but that improper use could trigger irreversible collapses. "You've awakened something that cannot be contained," the entity warned. "The only path forward is harmony or destruction." Back at the Citadel, the Council received the information with mixed reactions. Some saw it as further reason to destroy the Nexus, while others believed it could be used as leverage to negotiate with the Alliance. Kaon, now fully aware of the universal risk, proposed a daring new strategy: to use the Nexus to create a final jump that would isolate Viridia and the Nexus from the rest of the galaxy. "It's risky," he admitted, "but it might buy us the time we need to understand this without destroying everything around us." Naira, however, was hesitant. "And if we fail? We could doom Viridia and every connected system." As the Resistance prepared to execute the plan, the Alliance launched its largest assault yet. Frustrated by Viridia's resistance, Drassic ordered a massive orbital bombardment to force the Viridians into submission. The planet's already weakened shields began to collapse. Kaon led the ground defenses while Naira, racing against time, made the final adjustments to the Nexus for the jump. "Can you make this work?" Kaon asked in a transmission. Naira, tears in her eyes, replied, "I don't know, but it's our only chance." The climax came as the Nexus was activated for the jump. The energy released further destabilized the planet, causing tremors that destroyed what remained of the Citadel. Civilians and fighters scrambled for safety as the Nexus's lights intensified, illuminating the sky like a second sun. The last thing Kaon saw before everything went dark was Naira, standing at the console, determined to finish what she had started. "Whatever happens, make it count," she said, before vanishing in a wave of energy. The Nexus jump had been activated, but what was meant to be an emergency solution quickly spiraled into calamity. Instead of stabilizing the anomalies and isolating Viridia, the jump further destabilized the space-time around the planet, creating a series of ruptures that threatened to consume everything in their path. Energy crystals exploded like miniature stars, while the very sky seemed to fracture into spirals of light and shadow. Kaon, still leading the remnants of the Resistance, watched the destruction with a mix of horror and resignation. "So this is it," he murmured to himself. "Viridia is dying." In the makeshift lab where the Nexus had been activated, Naira struggled to contain the collapse. The energy released by the jump was overloading the systems, and the Nexus core began vibrating irregularly, as if on the verge of shattering. "If this blows, there'll be nothing left," she told her team, who worked frantically to find a solution. But Naira knew this was a race against time, and time was not on their side. Meanwhile, in orbit, Admiral Drassic watched Viridia's destruction with a mix of triumph and fear. "They're destroying themselves," he remarked as his ships monitored the ruptures from a safe distance. However, his sensors revealed something alarming. The anomalies were beginning to expand beyond Viridia, connecting to neighboring systems. "This isn't just about them," one of his officers warned. "If this continues, the entire galaxy will be at risk." Reluctantly, Drassic realized the situation was spiraling out of control. "Prepare a transmission to Viridia," he ordered. "There may still be a way to salvage this." On the surface, Kaon received Drassic's transmission with distrust. "Now he wants to help?" He scoffed as he read the message. But Naira, upon hearing of the offer, saw it as an opportunity. "Whatever it is, we need every resource possible to stabilize the Nexus," she said. "If they're willing to negotiate, it's because they know they're in danger too." Despite his reservations, Kaon agreed to open a channel of communication. The conversation with Drassic was brief but clear. The Alliance would provide technology to help stabilize the Nexus, but only if the device was permanently deactivated afterward. Without the Nexus, Viridia won't survive, Kaon argued. But Naira, her eyes fixed on the console, replied, "If we don't deactivate it, no one will survive." The collaboration between the Resistance and the Alliance brought an unexpected moment of truce. Alliance engineers were transported to the surface to assist Naira, while Kaon led efforts to protect the facility from energy storms and tremors. Despite the tension between the two sides, a shared goal overrode their rivalries: saving what was left of the galaxy. However, the operation was incredibly risky. To stabilize the Nexus, all remaining energy from the planet's crystals would have to be channeled, leaving Viridia entirely without resources. "This is total sacrifice," Kaon said as he observed the preparations. "And we don't even know if it will work." As the operation progressed, Naira grappled with a moral dilemma that had been growing since the war began. She knew deactivating the Nexus was the logical choice, but she also knew it would mean the end of Viridia as a habitable world. "I've spent my entire life trying to protect this planet," she admitted to Kaon in a moment of vulnerability. "And now, I'm the one destroying it." Kaon, with his characteristic steadiness, placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not destroying anything. You're saving something much greater. And that matters too." The climax came as the Nexus core began to respond to the stabilization efforts. The anomalies surrounding Viridia started to shrink, but the process unleashed waves of energy, so intense they threatened to destroy the facility itself. Kaon, leading a final line of defense against nature's fury, fought to ensure the operation continued to the end. "Hold your ground," he shouted as a surge of energy knocked his team back. Every second was both a victory and a loss. Finally, with the Nexus systems pushed to their limit, Naira managed to stabilize the anomalies and halt their expansion. The facility, however, was irreparably damaged, and the core began to collapse. "It's now or never," she said as she initiated the process for permanent deactivation. When the core finally powered down, silence engulfed the planet. The storms ceased, the tremors stopped, and the sky returned to a static hue. But for the Viridians, it was the silence of a world that had lost its essence. The skies over Viridia were silent for the first time in weeks. Without the energy storms and space-time ruptures, the planet seemed to have found a fragile peace. But for the survivors, that calm was no cause for relief. The Nexus was deactivated, and with it, all the energy that had sustained the planet was gone. The underground cities lay in ruins, the energy crystals were consumed, and what remained of Viridia was a shadow of the world it once was. Kaon, walking through the wreckage of the former citadel, gazed at the devastated horizon. "We're still here," he murmured to himself. "But what does being here mean now?" Naira, exhausted and emotionally shattered, remained in the makeshift lab, reviewing the Nexus's final data. Despite all the sacrifices, one lingering doubt tormented her. Had they truly won? The Nexus was deactivated, but the anomalies it had created might still exist in other systems. "We contained the worst," she said softly, staring at the data. "But did we truly erase it?" There was something about the fragments of energy, something incomplete, as if the Nexus had left pieces of itself scattered across the universe. Meanwhile, Admiral Drassic, observing Viridia from his ship, sent one final message to the Resistance. "You've proven to be more than we expected," he said. "But know this, the Nexus was not just a weapon. It was a lesson, and if you fail to learn from it, others will learn in your place." With that cryptic message, the Alliance fleet withdrew, leaving Viridia to rebuild its destiny. Drassic knew the galaxy was changing, and that the events on Viridia were only the beginning of something much larger. Back on the planet, the Viridians slowly began to reorganize. With few resources left, they came together to rebuild what they could. The Elder Council, now reduced to a fraction of its former members, declared that the people of Viridia needed to find a new identity, one that no longer depended on the Nexus or energy crystals. "We survived," one of the counselors said in a speech to the survivors. "And that is enough to begin again." Despite the hopeful words, an underlying sadness lingered on every face. What did it mean to start over in a world that had lost so much? Kaon and Naira met on top of a hill overlooking the destroyed valley. It was the same spot where they had spoken before the final jump, but now the landscape was unrecognizable. "So, this is it," Kaon said, looking at the remnants of the underground cities. "We won, but at what cost?" Naira, holding a broken crystal in her hands, replied, "I don't know if this was a victory. It was a choice, and choices have consequences." For the first time, Kaon didn't try to counter her words. He knew she was right, yet, even amid the destruction, there was a glimmer of hope. As Kaon and Naira talked, a child came running over the hills, holding something in her hands. It was a fragment of a crystal, still faintly glowing. "Does this still work?" she asked, her eyes full of curiosity. Naira took the crystal and examined it. "Not like it used to," she said, "but maybe we can find a new use for it." The child's smile, innocent and filled with hope, was a reminder that even in the midst of great loss, there was still something worth fighting for. The final scene shows Viridia from afar, now a scarred and wounded planet, but not defeated. In space, the stars shone as silent witnesses to what had transpired. Despite all the sacrifices the people of Viridia had endured, and that alone was a victory. But in the depths of the universe, something began to stir. Fragments of Nexus energy, scattered across the anomalies, started to pulse, as though awakening from a deep slumber. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Viridia's fight was only the beginning of a new era for the galaxy.